Good afternoon and welcome to part 2 of the November Managers Town Hall Meeting Virtual Edition. In this section we'll go through a brand new organization called Helping Hands. I'll give you a quick update on things that have been going on with the advisory committee, and I'll briefly touch on our new Resident Handbooks. We'll start off with Helping Hands. Helping Hands is a brand new organization of volunteers that was a vision of Joyce Ellis and was assembled to help people within the resort. You know, we've always had a pretty strong, I think, one of the best first responders organizations in the valley. But there's a gap between that. So you fall down the stairs, you call first responders, and they help you get an ambulance and help you get medical care. But what happens after that? You know, what is the next step, and how do you continue to go forward? Well, that's where the Helping Hands jumps in. Again, this is a volunteer group, so it's comprised of a lot of different people. And by the way, they still desperately need additional volunteers because not everybody is available to do everything, or nor do they want to. And so it doesn't really matter what you're willing to contribute. It could be transportation, it could be picking something up, it might be as simple as the willingness to pick up mail from the mail center here and delivering it to them. I mean, consider yourself with 2 broken legs. How do you get to the grocery store for groceries? How do you pick up your mail? How do you pick up prescriptions? It's very, very difficult, and this is the mission of the Helping Hands. They want to provide residents with temporary assistance during a medical or weather emergency. Their overall goal is to create a committee of resident volunteers to provide assistance for the following situations: illness, hospitalization, surgery, car accident, power outage, or weather emergencies. You know, when Joyce came to me, she painted this picture for me. She said, imagine there's a couple in the resort. They're pulling out one night to go to dinner, and they're in a fatal car accident. What happens next? Who notifies next of kin? Who has access to their house? Who takes over their pets? Who helps their next of kin come in and take care of things? You know, some of that can be done by our resort office here, but to do a complete and comprehensive coverage for this probably isn't going to come from here. You know, our assistance would be spotty, and I don't want that to sound negative. There's just a lot of things that even we don't know. Take that a step further. Take that and say this same couple goes out for dinner and they're in a car accident, but they're both hospitalized. Who waters their plants? Who walks their dog? Who picks up their mail? Who keeps their house going, you know, in the event of watering their lawn or keeping their pipes from freezing should we have a cold snap? You know, these are things that it would be very difficult for the office to be able to cover. So it's a much needed mission that hasn't been covered by anybody else. For the most part, when we have situations like this, it has been resident friends who step up. The goal here is to create something more formalized that people can rely on, that people can know is there to support them. These volunteers may provide any of the following services, or maybe only one of them. You know, it could range from pet care, picking up mail, updating, working with, helping the family when they come in. You know, they might not even know where to stay or how to get here. Transportation, there's a lot of times that people don't have transportation to get to a doctor's appointment or even to get to an airport. To pick up family and, you know, get them back here so they don't have to rent a car. picking up medication, being in contact and acting as a liaison with the church and maybe outside caregivers. You could also serve on the Helping Hands Committee. They're looking for help. They're a very open and caring and giving group of people that have volunteered for this, and you certainly could help with direction and organization and documentation and all of the things that are going on around this. They're also setting this up in the context of location-specific responsibilities. So let's say you live in the southwest corner of the resort. We want to have you be the first point of contact for some radius of your neighborhood. And the reason for that is you are the most likely to know when all of a sudden something's not right. Your neighbor's car hasn't moved in 2 days, or the lights aren't going on or off, or that doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem, but it's an indicator that we don't have today. And so maybe it's as simple as you just go next door and tap on the door and say, hey, just wanted to check and make sure everything's okay. We've tried various things in the past. I understand there were some like signs that people could put in the windows, and all of those are good when the process is working. But as people get bored with it or kind of fall away from it, all of a sudden it loses its credibility. If your neighbor was putting a sign up that says I'm okay and forgets to take it down at night and passes away in their sleep, you think they got up in the morning and put that sign up. There's just no alternative to true human contact in some of these situations, and that's what we're trying to address here. The terms of service, we felt like there needed to be some kind of structure put around this. Not that we think people would directly try to abuse the good-heartedness of this group, but we just thought it would make everyone feel better about it if they knew there were some restrictions. Now, even in this case, the restrictions are somewhat flexible. Depends on the circumstance and the ability of volunteers to help and things, but in general, it would be up to 30 days or until a family member, friend, or long-term assistance is made available. So the goal is always to get a permanent solution, but to fill that gap between the incident and that solution being in place, and allowing our residents to feel confident that there's somebody that cares that can help them through this. There's a couple of requirements. There's an application form that has to be filled out if you're looking for assistance. And now I urge you to fill this out in advance because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not like you can, in all cases, fill this out the day after an accident or a medical emergency. What you need is to have this information on file. And it's critical to understand that this is being done by a volunteer organization who will themselves be signatured to confidentiality, and none of this information will come to the company or the resort management or anything like that. It'll never be used for marketing. This is not a ploy to try to get information from you. We don't want this information for anything except what's required to do proper care for you. So there's a volunteer form, there's a resident information form, there's a pet care form. I can speak from experience. I have a dog who's on multiple medications, and it would be important that she receive those every day. So they've created a form for pets as well. And there's a confidentiality statement for volunteers, assuring that any information they have is confidential, as well as what they're doing. While it's okay in some cases to talk about the neighbor that fell down but is recovering, there are other times when that creates a lack of comfort. Some people don't want everybody to know that they're injured or that they're sick or that they've had an accident. The volunteer confidentiality statement assures that this is kept within, whatever radius that resident wants it to be. So where do you find the forms? The Activities Office has them, as does the Helping Hands Coordinator, Joyce Ellis. You can mail those back. You could email them back. The simplest way is to actually just fold the form over, put a staple in it, write Joyce Ellis at lot 211 on the outside, and drop it in the mail slot at the post office. It'll go directly to her. It remains confidential, and we're sure that it gets to her. In all cases, you should keep a copy of it. And by the way, you should also be filling out the first responders red envelope and information, and have that handy as well. Each of these things is critically important when the unexpected happens. We're not talking about when you get a cold. We're talking about emergencies, things that you've not planned for, and we want to make sure that you do plan for them. In closing, I just want you to kind of see the motto that they're working from. I will do something nice for others today. Everyone can use a helping hand now and then, and this is where that name came from. Today I will see others' needs and lift them up. It's an incredible opportunity for volunteers. It's an incredible safety net for our residents, and I hope that everyone will accept it for what it is. Join up, volunteer, fill out your forms, and make this thing the best that it can possibly be. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Advisory Council. Last year, I work hand in hand with the Advisory Council, and if you look at their charter, it says that they're a liaison for the residents to management, and to help foster communications in both directions between these groups. And they've done an incredible job. They work tirelessly. They're not some puppet organization that I control. I have absolutely no control, and as a matter of fact, on occasion they've yelled at me about things that you as residents have brought forward, and that's not trying to say that they're impolite or anything. They do it in the most professional way, but they let me know that there's an issue and it needs to be addressed. They are your liaison. Well, last year they came to me and they said, if you could name one thing that you would want us to do that would be beneficial to the resort and help you in the management of the resort. And I said, the number one thing I would like you to do is become more visible. You're not out in the forefront. Sometimes people don't fully understand who you are or what your mission is, and I believe that you're doing a good thing, a great service for this resort, and I would like you to be more public. And so I invited them to come to my town hall meetings and just provide a little update for the community so that they know what's going on. Well, this was the first instance of They started out, because this was the first instance, of announcing all of the members. Kathy Butcher is the chairperson of the overall council. Barb Baker, Wayne Colbert, Dave Doty, Karen Hermanson, Paulette Schaller, Gail Shoemake, Shane Whipple, and Dean Yoder. And each of these brings a completely unique view and experience to the table. Every single one of them, and I guarantee you this, has no desire other than to do what's best for the resort. They help me see things that need to be done. They direct questions to me when appropriate. You know, when you fill out a suggestion form, which, by the way, I should note is online at vpractivities.com, you can now just go to a website. This form is real easy. You click a few things, type in a little bit, and when you say submit, it gets immediately sent to Shane Whipple, who's driving that program. He evaluates what kind of an issue it is. In some cases, he'll respond with what he knows. In other cases, it comes forwarded to me for a response, and then they track my plan of how I'm going to fix something afterward. So you as residents need to be aware that you have this council out there working on your behalf, trying to make this resort better, and I think it's incredible. At none of the resorts that I managed in the past have we had a committee like this that really worked on behalf of the residents. They wanted to give some updates of some things that they're doing, and we had a strategic planning meeting last March. The number one priority, and it was kind of brought forward by me and agreed to by the team, is safety and emergency preparedness. I still have nightmares about April 2015 at 2:30 in the morning, when the wind finally died down, jumping on my golf cart and driving around the resort and seeing chaos. There was building materials all over. There were trees down in the road. There were branches everywhere. There were some streets that were impassable. And I was left with this horrible feeling that there could be somebody while the power was out who was reliant upon oxygen or maybe some other medical device, and I didn't know who they were. I didn't know where to go. And all I could do was circle the resort. I went down every street and I looked for anything that was truly hazardous, like if there was a power line down or a fire starting, or and I listened if there were people crying for help. And I mean, we're very lucky because there wasn't any true medical emergencies that came from this, but there was a lot of property damage. And ever since that day, I've been just driven to get the right plans and procedures and into place so that if that ever happens again, we know what to do. So that's why it was number one on mine. And they agreed, and that was what drove the emergency preparedness plan. And by the way, they've been on point reviewing it, providing input, giving me ideas. Now, a lot of it came from corporate, but it was all kind of assimilated into a document or a set of documents that covers the needs that we have. So as part of that, not only did they agree to help me create the plan, they volunteered to create the education from the plan. So in fact, they are going to be putting together education to train you, the residents, on what these things look like, what they mean to you, how you should react to them. And by the way, the documentation that we're going to give you is not all-inclusive. There are things in there that you have to identify and understand how it applies to you. Things like evacuation. It's different if you're in a car than an RV, and it's different if you're trying to go to a friend's house or to a shelter. There's a lot of things to consider. So they will be putting together this education and rolling this out to make you aware of how this plan can support you. I think that's an incredibly honorable task, and something that will make them the true experts in this. The teachers, the educators, are the smartest people about the discipline that they teach on. And I think that's an incredible thing, that we're going to have this group of experts at the ready to not only train but to help. So look for that coming out. We also talked about mobile home safety. There's a lot of things about mobile homes. I mean, some of you probably know, but your unit is weather rated, it's wind rated, and we have very low rating requirements here because we have a very warm climate and we're not subject to extreme winds being this far inland from the water. So you can absolutely buy a low-level windage certified unit and have it here 100% legally. But an awful lot of them are built to the coastal standards. And it's important that you understand what you have and what needs to be maintained on that. So this was something that they took on as a real program, and they're building this from scratch. One of the first things you're going to see that comes out from this is strapping, tie downs for your unit. It's a little known fact that these tie downs, even if they're done perfectly, do not last forever. They can corrode away from expansion and contraction. They can pull loose. Bottom line is, if your house is certified for 130 miles an hour of wind, that implies that the strapping is as well. So the worst thing that you could have is to have your house stay together but blow off its foundation. Might not be deadly, but it certainly would be expensive. And so that's one of the first things that you're going to see is they're setting up specifications on what to look for. They're going to provide recommendations for people that can come in and do repairs for you, and I think that's a pretty big deal. They also brought forward the idea of palm tree skinning, and it's not possible for me as the manager to even consider getting funding to skin all the trees here. It's a never-ending thing. Not all of our trees have ever been touched. Bottom line is, we did go to our tree trimming company, and we've negotiated a discount for them to come in and do the skinning, but for any trees that you want skinned, it's your responsibility and your cost. And while that may sound like I'm offloading something that should be mine, the reality is that there's no real benefit to the skinning other than aesthetic and a fewer things falling in your yard. And so there was just no way that I could create a case to corporate that said that we should pay for all of this. But we do know that there are some of you that would like to have your trees skimmed. We know that there's some critter habitat that takes place in there. It does away with that. It gives it a cleaner look. It truthfully isn't any healthier. It's not going to benefit your trees. It's more about the waste that blows off and the aesthetics of it. If you're interested, they'll be doing them the first week in December. There's a sign-up sheet in the activity office. Now, if you're remote, you can call the activity office, and what I'll try to do is create a secondary sheet of people who aren't here and see if I can either get them to come back at a later date to do those or to bill you, invoice you for it. But it's important to understand that we're not in the middle of this. We facilitated the agreement. The truth is, you could call anybody you want to come do it. We were just trying to make it easier for you. There's a number of people in the resort that have paid other people, to skin their trees. We allow you to do that. So if you don't like the people that we've set up, even though we think they're pretty good, you can go to anybody you want. But it's always going to be at your expense. Finally, they wanted to highlight the suggestion program with the online form access. It's been an incredible success. As I mentioned earlier, having that online allows you to very quickly and simply report either a suggestion or a compliance issue. There is a checkbox on that form that says this is a compliance or non-compliance issue. And so, your neighbor's not mowing their lawn, or there's some kind of a noise issue, or somebody's breaking the rules and running their remote control car up and down the street. This is a way that you can quickly submit a complaint, basically, on that we will react to. And while it's easier for us if you include who you are, the form does allow you to submit it anonymously. So here's the deal. Your neighbor's not mowing their lawn and you don't want to start a fight with them. You can submit this form anonymously. We'll get the form. We will go talk to the resident and get them mowing their lawn, and they don't know that it was you that did it. Maybe that's going to be viewed as being sneaky. I don't know, but look, the reality is we all live under the same rules, and it's only fair if we all play the game fairly. And we think this is a way that'll help. So take a look at it if you haven't seen it. VPRactivities.com, incredible website, just doing wonderful things. So, new Resident Handbooks. We took the path this year of doing an update to the existing copy of the handbook, completely based on cost savings. The changes were minor. I think there was about 19 pages, which means there's probably 19 changes. It's not a lot. And we took the approach of recreating the individual page. So when you check in, you'll get an update package, and at the bottom of the page it will tell you this page replaces this page. And it's always the same thing. I mean, page 2 replaces page 2. But the idea was, this way you can take this, unstaple it, and actually insert these right into your existing book, and you'll have the latest and greatest. So I want to go over just a couple of the changes that took place. First off, we updated the section around firearms, and what we were doing is adding the fact that there's no open carry allowed any place on the property. We did not address concealed carry because we've not had a problem with that. We don't even know who's concealed carrying. Anybody might have a weapon, but it's not out in the public. What we didn't want with the new open carry law is to have people show up at a dance with, their favorite beverage and a 6-gun strapped to their side. It's not the vision that we want, and we have the right within the law to ban that. You will see the officially licensed signs at our entry gates saying that it is against the law to open carry within this property. So we updated the book in that space. We had some concern come from our corporate because of potlucks. Certainly, we have 179, I think, parks or properties across the U.S., and every RV property does potlucks. It's kind of a staple. It's been around forever. But there have been instances where improper food handling, or perhaps even purchasing ingredients that have some type of bacteria or something. I mean, any one of us can go to the store and buy a head of lettuce, and maybe it has some kind of bacteria on it. Bottom line is, we had to put in a clarification that if you go to a potluck and if you participate by eating, you're doing it at your own risk. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm going to go and I'm going to eat, because it's so rare that anything happens, and I believe personally that I have just as much chance of getting food illness from something that I cook at home as I do from something that you cook to share. I think potlucks are a wonderful time. You get to taste so many different recipes and flavors and textures, and it's just a wonderful thing, and personally I'm not giving it up. But we did have to put a disclaimer in there that says you do it at your own risk. Gates, cards versus clickers. We updated the verbiage that talked about gate cards, because now there are no more cards in the resort. You won't get a little blue card this year when you come in. There's a keypad at the front gate, as well as the clickers. If you had a clicker from a previous year, it still works. We didn't change that at all. And we also added keypads to the exercise room, and we completed the keypad installation on the billiards room. So there's no more swipe cards anyplace, and we had to update the verbiage on that. RC vehicles, because we had some complaints last year, and we made an interim decision as soon as we got the RC track going that we were not going to allow remote control vehicles on the streets, and so we announced that last year, but we didn't have time or the ability to update the rule book until the end of season. So it's now updated to say that you are not allowed to run any RC vehicle on the street. As well, we took a couple of other complaints that we had, and the whole issue of drones is very new. People don't understand them. Some people are very frightened by them. There are people that believe that they could get hurt, or one could break through their roof or their window. Most of this is not correct, but it's still a fear factor that was affecting a large number of our resorts. Thus, we also included in the rules that you cannot fly a drone over any of the resort property without prior permission. And the only reason you get prior permission is if you're videotaping an activity or something along those lines. And then we're going to announce to everybody that's partaking in that activity that we'll be doing some drone footage and what the purpose of that will be. But other than that, you have to fly them outside the resort. So my suggestion is, you don't have to drive someplace else to do it. Go to the RC track back in that area and launch from there and fly it out around the outside of the resort, or some of them go like a mile away or longer, I guess. And there's lots of place to fly them. It's just not a comfort feeling for most of our residents to know that they're flying around their house and around our pool and things like that. So that's been updated in the new book. Vehicles on lots. It's important that you remember that you can't have an RV on the same lot as a park model or a manufactured home. It's absolutely forbidden. Even within the registration of our property, it says that you can have one RV or manufactured home on a lot. You can never have two. Now, there is one exception to that, and this is a long shot. If that RV is your primary mode of transportation, and that means you don't have a car, it doesn't count if you take the RV out once a month and drive it around the block to exercise it. That's not being your primary mode of transportation. In other words, the RV has to be your car, not an RV. You can't stay in it, you shouldn't be having it plugged in, and it can't be parked on your lot except unless it's that primary vehicle. We also clarified the number of vehicles you can have on your lot. We re-emphasized that you can't park anything on the grass, and there's ways around that, but please look at the new rules. Construction requirements, and this has been a real thorn in my side. It's important that you get an application for improvement to your lot. It's clearly stated that it's a requirement in your lease. It's even more clearly and more well defined in the handbook. you are required to get approval to do anything to your house from a construction standpoint. That means adding something, extending something. If you're changing your roof and changing the color or the material, you're supposed to get our authorization. If you're painting it, you're supposed to bring us the color palette. And here's the way this works. You bring us that information. If it's a color thing or something like that, then I have say. And unless you're doing something bizarre, we're going to approve it. I can tell you that I'm aware of one time a color was deemed to be too strong for the resort and the area that it was in. So one time a color choice was denied, and but an alternative was selected, and it was approved and gone. As far as construction, I'm not aware of a single plan that was denied. In some cases, they were modified, but here's why this is important. First off, you must maintain parking space for your vehicle or vehicles on your lot. You can't park on neighboring lots. At no time can you so expand your unit that there's not sufficient parking left. You don't own that lot beside you. It's not fair for you to have that lot when other people have had to park on their lot. 90% of the resort can't expand their unit because they have to have that parking. So it's not fair to just assume that you can park next door. That's issue number one, and one that's been kind of ignored around here, and we won't allow it going forward. Secondarily, there's all kinds of stuff under the ground. There's water pipes and gas pipes and sewer pipes. There's cable lines and electrical lines. And in some cases, there's shut-off valves and things that are around your property. So the next thing that's going to happen is when you submit your plan, Jody or one of the maintenance team will come out and validate that if you're pouring concrete or if you're digging a hole for footings, or that you're not going to hit something. I mean, stop and think. If I go out into the street here on Donna Drive and want to dig a hole to put a sign, I have to call the utility marking service to come out. This is the law. I have to call them to come out and mark where my utilities are so that I don't interrupt. And it's a huge fine if I do this without calling them first. Well, all we're asking is a subset of that within the resort. Let our people come out and make sure that what you're doing is completely on your property. It's not going to take away your parking spaces, and it's not going to bury a valve or a significant part of our underground infrastructure that would require us digging your stuff back up. Because that's what we would have to do, is like tear your addition off in order to get to this water valve if that broke. There's not an alternative. And so these are critical things. The lease and the rule book actually provide for financial penalties and other recourse. I don't want to go there. That's not what this is all about. Play the rules fair like we all want it to be, and everything will be fine. And, you know, it's really that straightforward. So check out the construction requirements. It's really simple, and there's a 99.999% chance that there'll be nothing changed about your plan. But you give us the plan, and then we will sign it, give you a copy, and then the main copy goes into your file, and it's there forever saying that we approved whatever you did to your building. So that's been updated. Pool furniture, no mass saving. This has been an issue that has put resident against resident when we have big events at the pool. It's a tough thing. I understand that you want a place where all of your neighbors can come together, and but it's still not fair when we have 1,500 people in here and we have 100 chairs at the pool. It's not fair to go lay towels on 15 of them to save them for your neighbors. Our requirement is if you're going to save something, you have to be there. And so we're not going to allow this mass saving for events. We're not trying to penalize anybody in any of these things. It's simply trying to be fair to everyone. And it's not fair when somebody goes and reserves 10 seats and then goes away. And they come back 15 minutes before the event and they have these chairs and there's people like sitting on the ground because they couldn't get a chair. It's first come, first serve only if you're going to be there. And that's what we're trying to do, is to make it fair for everyone. Similarly with the pool music, in this new system, we have 4 quadrants of sound at the pool. We installed 4 volume controls outside. They're at your disposal. The only thing that we have to be cautious about is your preference might not be that of the majority. So let's say that the music's too loud. It'd be real easy to, just kind of ask a few people, is it okay if I turn this down a little bit? The same kind of courtesy that you would have virtually any place else. Let's say that you and a group of your friends have decided to sit under the cabanas, but you really don't want the music over there. These are zoned volume controls, so you can go turn off the music that's playing there and not affect the rest of the pool. They can still hear what they want. As far as types of music, it's also not fair to go in and turn it all off because you don't like the type of music, unless you're the only one at the pool. Then it's fine. But virtually everything that's in our music repertoire now is based on suggestions and requests from residents. So, if it's classic country and you just hate classic country, I'm sorry, but there was somebody that requested that specifically. And if you like something more upbeat, we're going to play that too. We're going to play everything, but we have to all play together because we have different wants, needs, and likes. So please do your best to, be cognizant of what's going on at the pool and play accordingly. And there is some new. It's actually not new. It's clarification of what happens if you break a lease. I talked earlier in the other section about the new lease and some of the tenets of it. And this is just to say that there was a kind of unwritten system that was taking place in the resort under Hines, where with a 30-day notice you could break your lease and there was no penalty. Well, if you stop and think about it, what is a lease then? It's a contract that you're going to take some number of months, and if you can just break it at any time for no special reason with no penalty, then why do we even have it? Now, I would be the first one to argue that in the Hines organization with a 5-year lease, that was painful and that was unreasonable. And so I assume that that's why they allowed lease breaks. But we're doing a 1-year lease. Your commitment is well manageable. It's well within reach. And, there shouldn't be any major reason. There's always a way out, but there's going to be a penalty. All of our planning, all of our forecasting, everything is based on those leases being in place. And when they drop out early, it creates hardship for us. We end up spending money or falling below the break-even point, or things like that, that from a publicly traded corporation is a very bad thing. So look at it. It really isn't anything that wasn't always there. It's clarification of it. So that's it for this section. This was section 2. There's still a little bit more in section 3. Take a break, wait till tomorrow, but go listen to section 3. I especially want you to listen because there's some personal thanks at the end for some people that are doing an awful lot for you, and I would like everybody to hear those. Thank you for listening.